The space station floated in the darkness like a silver ring against the stars. They called it the Eternal Accord, and for 3,000 years it had been the place where empires made peace or declared war. Today, 17 species had gathered inside its massive halls. They had come to discuss one thing: the future of humanity. Park Jisoo stood at the window of the human quarters, watching the cold light of distant suns. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many lies dressed up as truth. As Earth's ambassador, she had spent 20 years learning how aliens thought, how they bargained, and how they smiled while planning your destruction. Behind her, Captain Lee Sunwoo checked his tablet for the 5th time. He was a tall man with a soldier's posture and a face that rarely showed emotion. His job was to keep the ambassador safe, but today, safety felt like a word from a children's story. "The Valori delegation has arrived," he said. "High Speaker Torek is already in the main chamber." Jisoo turned from the window. "Good. Let us not keep the executioner waiting." Dr. Kim Hana looked up from her notes. She was the youngest member of the delegation, a brilliant analyst who could read political situations the way others read books. "Ambassador, I have been studying the other delegations. Something feels wrong. They are too calm, too certain." "They have already made their decision," Jisoo replied. "This summit is not a trial. It is a ceremony. They simply want us to play our part before they announce the verdict." The three of them walked through the curved corridors of the station. Other species passed them in the halls. The Neth, with their insect-like bodies and clicking mandibles, turned their heads to watch the humans go by. A group of Salari, beings made of living gel that shifted colors with their moods, pressed against the walls to let them pass. None of them spoke to the humans. None of them even nodded in greeting. Humanity had joined the Galactic Concord 40 years ago. In cosmic terms, they were newborns. The Valori had ruled their empire for 60,000 years. The Neth Collective had existed for twice that long. To these ancient species, humans were interesting curiosities at best and dangerous pests at worst. The main chamber was a vast circular room with seats, rising in tiers like an ancient theater. At the center stood a raised platform where speakers could address the assembly. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing star maps and data streams in a dozen different languages. That High Speaker Torek sat in the highest seat reserved for the host of each summit. He was Valori, which meant he stood 8 feet tall, with scales like polished black stone and eyes that burned with orange fire. His voice was deep enough to shake the floor when he spoke. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," Torek said. His translator device made his words sound almost friendly, but Jisoo had learned to watch Valori body language. The slight tilt of his head, the way his claws rested on his chair, he was already celebrating victory. "Please take your seats. We have much to discuss." The human delegation sat in the lowest tier, closest to the exit. Jisoo noticed this was not an accident. Every other species sat above them, looking down like judges in a courtroom. "This summit has been called to address the human question," Torek announced. "As all present know, Earth's colonies in the Orion Spur may violate territorial claims that predate human spaceflight by several thousand years." "May violate?" Sunwoo whispered. "The Valori gave us those coordinates themselves when we first made contact." Jisoo silenced him with a look. She had expected this. The galaxy operated on one simple rule: the strong took what they wanted and wrote laws to justify it later. One by one, the other species spoke. The Neth representative clicked and buzzed about ancient treaties. The Druan ambassador, a serpentine creature with feathered scales, talked about balance of power and regional stability. The Silari changed colors rapidly as they discussed security concerns about human expansion. Not a single species spoke in humanity's defense. Not one voice questioned whether the claims against Earth were true or fair. Hana passed Jisoo a small note. I recognize this pattern. It is called the Circle of Consensus. They rehearsed these speeches before we arrived. Every word has been agreed upon in advance. Jisoo read the note and burned it with a small device in her sleeve. She kept her face perfectly still, but inside, something cold settled in her chest. They had traveled 3 months through hyperspace for this meeting. They had come believing that reason and evidence might matter. They had been fools. The speeches continued for hours. Each one added another layer to the case against humanity. Earth had expanded too quickly. Humans were too aggressive. Human technology was advancing too fast. Human birth rates were too high. Every strength humanity possessed was reframed as a threat to galactic peace. When the last speaker finished, Torek rose to his full height. A Concord has heard the concerns of its member species. Tomorrow, we will present our proposed solution to the human question. I trust Earth's delegation will approach these proposals with wisdom and humility. The word humility hung in the air like poison. Jisoo stood slowly. The delegation of Earth thanks the Concord for this opportunity to speak. We look forward to tomorrow's session with great interest. She turned and walked out of the chamber, her team following close behind. She did not look back. She did not let her expression change until the door closed behind them. Only then did she allow herself to speak freely. Lieutenant Yoon, I want full surveillance on all delegations tonight. Captain Sunwoo, contact the fleet. Tell Admiral Cho to move to standby positions. Yoon Minji, their communications officer, nodded sharply. She was young but sharp, with quick hands and quicker instincts. Yes, Ambassador. Should I use the secure channel? Use the channel they do not know about, Jisoo replied. The one built into my personal transport. Hannah fell into step beside her. Ambassador, what are you expecting to find? Jisoo stopped walking. The corridor was empty, but she lowered her voice anyway. I am expecting to find proof of what we already suspect. This summit is not about negotiation. It is about making humanity kneel before they destroy us anyway. The question is whether we can prove it before tomorrow. The team returned to their quarters in silence. Outside the windows, the Eternal Accord continued its slow rotation around the neutral world below. Somewhere beyond the system's edge, the Valerie fleet waited in the darkness. And somewhere even further away, Earth's children slept peacefully on 12 colony worlds, trusting that their leaders would protect them. Jisoo sat alone in her room that night, staring at the stars. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, about her grandchildren who had never known war. She thought about all the young people who had grown up believing the galaxy was a place of laws and justice. Tomorrow, she would have to tell them the truth. The galaxy was a jungle, and humanity had just discovered it was surrounded by predators. But predators, she knew, often made one fatal mistake. They assumed their prey would simply accept being eaten. Park Jisoo smiled grimly in the darkness. They had badly underestimated humanity. The night cycle on the Eternal Accord lasted 6 standard hours. For most delegations, it was a time to rest and prepare for the next day's discussions. For Lieutenant Yoon Minji, it was a time to hunt. She sat in a small maintenance closet that she had turned into a makeshift intelligence station. 3 screens glowed in front of her, each one showing streams of intercepted data. The Concord believed their communications were secure, protected by encryption methods that had worked for thousands of years. They did not know that human engineers had cracked those codes within the first decade of contact. They did not know because humanity had never told them. Minji's fingers moved across, her keyboard like a musician playing an instrument. She filtered through thousands of messages, looking for patterns and keywords. Most of it was routine diplomatic chatter, but every few minutes, she found something that made her stomach turn cold. At 3 in the morning, Station time, she found the file that changed everything. She ran to the ambassador's quarters and knocked urgently. Jisoo opened the door within seconds, fully dressed, clearly unable to sleep. "What did you find?" Minji handed her a tablet. "Everything. They have been planning this for years." The file was called Operation Quiet Garden. It contained battle plans, fleet positions, and detailed invasion routes for all 12 human colony worlds. The attacks were scheduled to begin within 72 hours, regardless of what happened at the summit. But that was not the worst part. The file also contained agreements between the Valori and other Concord members. Each species had been promised a piece of humanity. The Neth would receive Earth's mining operations in the asteroid belt. The Solari had been given rights to capture human civilians for biological study. And the Druin, the same Druin that humanity had saved from a deadly plague 10 years ago, had been promised Earth's agricultural technology and the farmlands of 3 colony worlds. Jisoo read through the documents in silence. When she finished, she looked up at Minji with eyes that burned like cold fire. "Wake the others, now." Within an hour, the entire human delegation gathered in a secured room. The walls had been lined with signal-blocking material, and every electronic device had been checked for monitoring software. Captain Sunwoo stood guard at the door while Jisoo explained what Minji had dissed. Covered. Dr. Kim Hana was the first to speak after the briefing. "This explains the confidence we saw in the chamber. They are not negotiating. They are simply waiting for us to sign our own death warrant before they attack." "But why?" asked one of the junior diplomats. "Why go through this performance at all? Why not just attack?" "Because they want legal cover," Hannah replied. "If we reject their terms, they can claim we were unreasonable and aggressive. If we accept, they can claim we admitted guilt. Either way, history will record that humanity brought destruction upon itself." Sunwoo's voice was tight with controlled anger. "What about the Druin? We saved millions of their people. Our doctors worked for 3 years to cure their plague. How can they betray us like this?" Jisoo shook her head slowly. "The Druin leaders have short memories and shorter gratitude. To them, we are a young species that got lucky once. They do not believe we can threaten them, so our friendship has no value." The room fell silent. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the drama unfolding among the tiny creatures who had learned to sail between them. Finally, Jisoo activated the secure communication system. The screen flickered, and the face of Admiral Cho Tae-ho appeared. He was an old man with a scarred face and white hair, cut short in military style. He had fought in 3 wars before humanity ever reached the stars, and his eyes held the weight of every soldier he had ever lost. "Ambassador," he said, "I received Lieutenant Yoon's preliminary report. Please tell me the full picture is not as bad as I think." "It is worse," Jisoo replied. She transmitted the complete file. Tae-ho read through it in silence. His expression did not change, but his jaw tightened with each page. When he finished, he looked directly into the camera. 72 hours, he said. "That is how long we have before they attack. What are our options?" Jisoo asked. The Admiral leaned back in his chair. "Our fleet is smaller than theirs. The Valori alone outnumber us 3-1, and they have allies. In a direct confrontation, we would lose. Then we cannot fight?" "I did not say that." Tae-ho's eyes showed something that might have been the ghost of a smile. "I said we would lose in a direct confrontation. But we have spent 40 years preparing for the possibility that the galaxy might not welcome us. We have cards they do not know about." He pulled up a star map on his end, and it appeared on the screens in the human quarters. Red dots showed Valori fleet positions. Blue dots began appearing at 16 different points across the map. The 3rd Fleet and 7th Fleet have been on silent running for the past month, Taio explained. They are currently positioned here, here, and here. He highlighted several points. If I give the order, they can exit hyperspace directly behind the Valori Armada within 4 hours. We also have stealth destroyers positioned near their supply lines and communication relays. Sunwoo studied the map with professional interest. You planned for this. I hoped it would never be necessary, Taiyao replied. But yes, we planned for this from the day we signed the Concord Agreement. We smiled and shook hands and pretended to believe their promises of equality. But we never stopped preparing for the day they decided we were no longer useful. Jisoo absorbed this information. Her mind was already racing ahead, considering possibilities. Admiral, can we win? Winning is not the right question, Taio said. The right question is, can we make them bleed enough that victory becomes too expensive? The answer to that question is yes. We cannot defeat the entire Concord, but we can hurt them badly enough that they will think twice before attacking again. And our colonies? Our civilians? Every human world has been quietly preparing evacuation plans for years. Underground shelters, emergency supply caches, hidden communication networks. If war comes, we will lose people. We will lose worlds. But we will not be exterminated. And we will make sure they remember the cost of attacking humanity. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Hannah spoke. There may be another way. The coalition against us depends on secrecy. None of them want their populations to know what they have agreed to. If we expose the conspiracy publicly, it might create enough chaos to change the situation. Jisoo considered this. Go on. The Concord has always presented itself as a fair and just organization. If the galaxy learns that 17 species conspired to destroy a peaceful neighbor through deception, it will shatter that image. Some species might withdraw their support simply to avoid the shame. And if they do not? Sunwoo asked. Jisoo stood and walked to the window. The Eternal Accord turned slowly beneath the alien stars. Somewhere out there, her enemies were sleeping peacefully, confident in their power and their plans. She turned back to face her team. Then we show them what happens when you corner a human. Admiral Cho, move our fleets into position. Lieutenant Yoon, prepare a broadcast package with all the evidence we have collected. Dr. Kim, I want you to write the speech that will change this galaxy forever. She paused, looking at each of them in turn. Tomorrow, we do not kneel. Tomorrow, we stand up. And if they want war, we will give them one they will never forget. The morning session began exactly on schedule. The great chamber filled with representatives from 17 species, each taking their assigned seats in the rising tiers. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the Concord emblem rotating slowly above the central platform. High Speaker Torek entered last, as was his privilege as host. His black scales gleamed under the artificial lights, and his orange eyes swept across the assembly with obvious satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Today, humanity would learn its place. The human delegation arrived precisely on time. Ambassador Park Jisoo walked at the front, her face calm and composed. Behind her came Captain Sun Woo, Dr. Kim Hana, and Lieutenant Yoon Minji. They took their seats in the lowest tier without complaint, without hesitation. Torek noted their silence with pleasure. They understood, finally. They had spent the night accepting the reality of their situation. Good. This would make things easier. Representatives of the Galactic Concord, Torek announced, his deep voice filling the chamber. Yesterday, we heard the concerns of our member species regarding humanity's expansion. Today, we present the Concord's proposal for resolution. He activated a holographic display. A star map appeared, showing human territory marked in blue. As he spoke, Sections of blue began turning red, orange, and yellow, representing transfer to other species. Earth will surrender 12 colony worlds to be redistributed among affected parties. Earth will pay reparations to the Valori Dominion and its allies for a period of 300 standard years. Earth's military will be reduced to defensive patrol craft only. All human expansion beyond current borders will cease indefinitely. And finally, Earth will accept guidance from a council of elder species in all matters of foreign policy. The chamber was silent. Every eye turned to the human delegation. Torek spread his clawed hands in a gesture of false generosity. These terms are fair. They protect galactic stability while allowing humanity to continue its existence under proper supervision. Earth's ambassador may now respond. Ambassador Park Jisu rose slowly from her seat. She smoothed her jacket, adjusted her translator, and walked to the central platform with measured steps. Every species in the chamber watched her approach. Most expected tears or anger or desperate bargaining. They expected the behavior of a defeated enemy. Jisu reached the platform and turned to face the assembly. Her voice was calm, clear, and carried to every corner of the vast room. Distinguished representatives, she began, humanity came to this summit seeking peace. We extended our hand in friendship. We asked only for fair treatment under Concord law. We believed that justice might exist among the stars. She paused, letting her words settle. We were wrong. A murmur rippled through the chamber. This was not the script they had expected. Torek leaned forward. Ambassador, the Concord's proposal is generous. I suggest you consider. I have considered, Jisu interrupted. Her voice cut through his words like a blade. We reject your terms, completely, unconditionally, every single one. The murmur became a roar. Species that had not spoken in centuries began chattering with their neighbors. The Neth clicked furiously. The Silari flashed through colors of confusion and alarm. The Druan ambassador's feathers stood straight up in shock. You cannot, Torek started. Furthermore, Jisu continued, raising her voice above the chaos, we possess evidence that this summit was never intended to achieve peace. Your coalition decided our fate before we arrived. Your speeches were rehearsed. Your judgment was written in advance. She reached into her jacket and produced a small device. Lieutenant Hume, please begin the broadcast. The holographic display above the platform flickered and changed. Instead of star maps and territory transfers, it now showed documents. Communications between the Valori and their allies. Battle plans for Operation Quiet Garden. Agreements dividing human territory among Concord members. Detailed discussions about human prisoners being given to the Silari for experimentation. The chamber exploded into chaos. The Druan ambassador tried to slither toward the exit, but other delegates blocked his path. The Silari quivered so violently that they began to lose cohesion. The Neth representative's mandibles clicked in a pattern that translated roughly to extreme panic. This is lies, Torek shouted. Human fabrication. Every document is verified with Concord encryption signatures, Jisu replied coolly. Your own security protocols confirm they are genuine. The entire galaxy can see them now. We are broadcasting on every public channel. She turned to face Torek directly. For the first time, she allowed her anger to show in her eyes. You plan to attack our colonies within 72 hours, regardless of our answer today. You promised our technology to the Druan, the same Druan whose lives we saved when plague threatened their homeworld. You promised our people to the Silari for their laboratories. You did all this while smiling and speaking of justice. Torek's scales flushed dark with rage. You dare accuse the Concord. I dare because I have proof. And I dare because humanity is not as helpless as you believed. Captain Sun Wu stepped forward, his tablet displaying a new star map. At this moment, Earth's 3rd Fleet and 7th Fleet have exited hyperspace at the following coordinates. The map updated. Blue dots appeared at 16 points throughout the sector, including 3 positions directly behind the Valori Armada. Your fleet is surrounded, Sunwoo announced. Our vessels carry weapons your species has never encountered. We have had 40 years to prepare for this day, and we have not wasted them. The chamber fell silent. The representatives looked at each other, at the documents still scrolling across the display, at the star map showing human ships in positions of tactical advantage. Jisoo walked to the edge of the platform. Her voice dropped lower, but somehow it carried even further. Let me be clear about what happens next. We are not here to beg for mercy. We are not here to negotiate the terms of our surrender. We are here to deliver a message that every species in this galaxy will remember. She raised her chin. Humanity will not kneel. Not today. Not ever. If you want our worlds, come and take them. But understand this. The cost will be higher than any of you are prepared to pay. We will fight with everything we have. We will fight until the last human draws their last breath. And even then, our children's children will remember what you did here, and they will never stop fighting. She turned and walked toward the exit, her delegation falling into step behind her. The crowd parted before them like water before a ship dock at the door. Jisoo paused. She looked back at the assembled representatives, the ancient empires, the powerful coalitions, the species that had ruled the stars for millennia. This summit is concluded, she said, and then she was gone. The chamber remained frozen in shock. No young species had ever defied the Concord. No newcomer had ever rejected the judgment of their elders. No prey had ever bared its teeth at the predators and walked away alive. High Speaker Torix stared at the door for a long moment. His claws gripped the arms of his chair so tightly that the metal began to bend. Contact the fleet, he snarled to his aide. Tell them. But even as he spoke, reports began flooding in. Human ships everywhere. Human broadcasts reaching every corner of the galaxy. Protests beginning on a dozen worlds where populations had just learned what their governments had planned. The humans had not. Simply rejected the Concord's terms. Had set the entire galaxy on fire. The news spread like fire across dry grass. Within hours, every intelligent species in the galaxy had seen the recordings from the Eternal Accord. Ambassador Park Jisoo's speech played on screens and holographic displays from the core worlds to the frontier colonies. The documents proving the conspiracy were downloaded, analyzed, and shared billions of times. On the Valori homeworld, civilians watched in disbelief as their government's secret plans were exposed to the universe. For generations, they had been told that the Concord represented law and order, that elder species guided younger ones for their own benefit, that peace required strong leadership. Now they saw the truth. Their leaders had planned to exterminate an entire species through deception and murder. Protests began in the capital city within 6 hours. By the end of the first day, millions of Valori had taken to the streets demanding answers. High Speaker Torix's government issued statements claiming the documents were forgeries, but no one believed them. The encryption signatures were verified by independent analysts. The voices in the recordings were confirmed by linguistic experts. There was no doubt about what the Concord had planned. On the Druun homeworld, the reaction was even more severe. When citizens learned that their government had betrayed the species that saved them from plague, the outcry shook the foundations of their society. Within 3 days, the Druun parliament collapsed. Ministers who had supported the conspiracy were dragged from their offices by angry crowds. Some managed to escape to off-world stations. Many did not. The Silera Union fell into chaos as other species learned about their plans for human prisoners. The Solari had always presented themselves as peaceful scientists, devoted to understanding life in all its forms. Now the galaxy knew they had bargained for living test subjects. Trade agreements were cancelled. Diplomatic relations were severed. Silari ambassadors found themselves unwelcome on worlds where they had been honored guests for centuries. Admiral Cho Tai-ho watched these developments from his command ship, the U's Unconquered. Around him, officers monitored reports from across the sector. The Valerie fleet had not moved from its position, but neither had it attacked. They sat in space like a predator, suddenly unsure whether its prey might bite back. "They are afraid to shoot first," observed Captain Sun Woo, who had transferred to the Admiral's ship to coordinate military operations. "They know the galaxy is watching." "More than that," Tai-ho replied. "They are afraid of what our fleet might do. They expected to attack defenseless colonies. They did not expect to face warships with weapons they have never seen." He pulled up tactical data on his display. The human ships were smaller than Valerie vessels, but they carried technology developed in secret for 40 years. Railguns that could punch through Valerie armor. Shield systems based on principles the Concorde had never discovered. Stealth capabilities that made human destroyers invisible to alien sensors. "How long can we maintain this standoff?" Sun Woo asked. "As long as necessary. Our supply lines are secure, and our people are motivated. The Valerie are used to quick victories against weak opponents. They do not know how to fight an enemy that refuses to surrender." Back on Earth, Director Beek Yuna coordinated the global response from the Security Council headquarters in Seoul. Her office had become a command center, with screens covering every wall showing feeds from across human space. Diplomatic messages flooded in faster than her staff could process them. 18 species have requested private communication channels, her aide reported. 12 of them were present at the summit. Yuna looked up from her work. "How many want to apologize, and how many want to make deals?" "Most of them want both." She allowed herself a brief smile. "Tell them we will consider their requests in due time. Right now, our priority is our own people." The evacuation protocols that Admiral Cho had mentioned were already in effect. On the outer colony worlds closest to Valerie space, civilians moved to underground shelters, prepared years in advance. Children were sent to interior worlds where they would be safer. Factories switched to military production. Every human world transformed itself into a fortress, but something else was happening too, something that Yuna had not expected. Volunteers were flooding recruitment centers. People who had never considered military service were signing up by the millions. Scientists offered their expertise. Engineers proposed new weapons and defensive systems. Artists created images and songs celebrating humanity's stand. A message from a young girl on the colony world of New Bizon caught Yuna's attention. The girl was 8 years old, and she had drawn a picture of Ambassador Park Jisoo standing before the alien delegates. In the picture, Jisoo was surrounded by light, and the aliens were cowering in darkness. "We are not afraid," the girl had written beneath the picture. "We have heroes." Yuna stared at the image for a long moment. Then she forwarded it to Jisoo's personal channel with a simple note. "This is why we fight." On the Eternal Accord, Dr. Kim Hanna worked without sleep, fielding communications from across the galaxy. Species that had never spoken to humans before were sending questions, expressions of support, and requests for information. A young Neth scholar had transmitted a message that had gone viral across the Concord networks. They were offered submission or destruction. They chose neither. They chose defiance. What manner of species is this? That question echoed everywhere. For thousands of years, the pattern had been the same. Elder species dominated younger ones. The weak submitted to the strong. Resistance was punished with overwhelming force. No one had ever successfully challenged this order. Until now. Hana compiled reports on the changing galactic situation. The Arvani tribes, a loose confederation of nomadic species, had publicly condemned the Concord's actions. The Kelith Wanderers, mysterious beings who traveled between stars and living ships, had broken their silence for the first time in 500 years to express admiration for human courage. Even some Valore commanders had privately questioned whether the attack on humanity was justified. "We have started something," Hana said to Jisoo during a brief meeting. "Something bigger than just our survival." Jisoo nodded slowly. "I know. The galaxy is watching to see what we do next. If we are cruel in victory, we become no better than the Concord. If we are weak, we invite future attacks. What will you do?" The ambassador looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, two fleets faced each other across the void, their weapons ready, their crews waiting for orders that could change history. "I will show them a third option," Jisoo said. "I will show them that strength and justice can exist together. That power does not require cruelty. That humanity earned its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through courage." She turned back to face Hana. "Contact the Orvani and the Kelith. Tell them we want to talk. And tell the Valori High. Command that we are willing to negotiate, but only with leaders who were not involved in the conspiracy." "You would make peace with them, after what they planned?" "Peace is always possible," Jisoo replied. "What is never possible is going back to the way things were. The old order died in that chamber when we walked out. Now we must build something new, something better." Outside the windows of the Eternal Accord, the stars continued their ancient dance. But for the first time in millennia, they shone on a galaxy that was beginning to change. 6 months had passed since the summit on the Eternal Accord. In that time, the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. High Speaker Torek was gone. His own council had removed him from power after the extent of his deception became clear. The Valori people, proud and ancient as they were, could not accept being led by someone who had brought such shame upon their empire. Torek had been exiled to a frozen moon at the edge of Valori space, where he would spend the rest of his life in isolation, surrounded by nothing but ice and regret. The Concord itself had fractured. 7 species had withdrawn their membership, entirely unwilling to be associated with the conspiracy. 5 others had demanded fundamental reforms before they would participate in any future decisions. The old order, built on the assumption that elder species would always dominate younger ones, lay in pieces. Ambassador Park Jisoo returned to Keseth Prime for a new summit very different from the first. This time, the human delegation did not sit in the lowest tier. They sat at the center of the chamber, surrounded by representatives from 30 species who had come to witness the birth of something new. The Arvani tribes sent their greatest, Wanderer Chief, a being of flowing silver and living crystal. The Kelith Wanderers appeared in their bioorganic ship forms, speaking in harmonics that their translators struggled to interpret. Species that had been silent for centuries now raised their voices, drawn by the example humanity had set, stood at the central platform, just as she had 6 months before. But this time, she was not facing judges. She was addressing equals. "Distinguished representatives," she began, "we have all seen what happens when power is used without justice. We have all witnessed the corruption that grows when some species consider themselves superior to others. Today, we have the opportunity to choose a different path." She activated a holographic display showing the proposed charter for a new organization. "We call it the Free Concord. Its principle is simple: no species above another. No empire has the right to dictate the fate of others. Every voice matters, every world has dignity, and every being deserves the chance to choose their own future." The assembly listened in silence as Jisoo outlined the details. Equal voting rights regardless of species age or power. transparent decision-making with no secret agreements, mutual defense pacts that protected the weak from the strong, trade agreements that benefited all parties fairly. This will not be easy, Jisu acknowledged. We are creatures of habit, and the old ways feel comfortable. There will be those who try to seize power, who believe that might makes right. But if we stand together, we can create something that has never existed in this galaxy. True peace based on mutual respect. When she finished, the chamber remained quiet for a long moment. Then the Orvani chief rose, silver light rippling across their form. My people have wandered the stars for 12,000 years, they said. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have watched species that thought themselves eternal become dust and memory. But we have never seen a young species stand against the darkness, as humanity has done. The Orvani tribes will join this free concord. One by one, others rose to pledge their support. The Keleth hummed in agreement. Representatives from a dozen smaller species, emboldened by the example before them, declared their intention to participate. Even some former Concord members, their governments transformed by the events of the past months, expressed cautious interest. Commodore Lee Sunwoo watched the proceedings from the observation deck above the chamber. Beside him stood Lieutenant Yoon Minji, now promoted to commander in recognition of her crucial role in exposing the conspiracy. 6 months ago, I thought we might be starting a war, Sunwoo admitted. I never imagined we might be starting a revolution. Minji smiled slightly. Ambassador Park always saw further than the rest of us. She knew that standing up would inspire others to do the same. Below them, the voting had begun. Species after species registered their support for the Free Concord Charter. When the final count was announced, 42 civilizations had joined the new alliance. It was not the entire galaxy, the Velori, and their remaining allies held back, suspicious and uncertain. But it was a beginning. Back on Earth, Admiral Cho Tayo gave his final press conference before retiring from military service. The room was packed with reporters from every human world, their cameras broadcasting to billions of viewers. Admiral, one reporter asked, what message would you send to the galaxy after everything that has happened? The old soldier considered the question carefully. His scarred face softened just slightly as he thought about all the young people watching. We did not win because we were stronger, he said finally. The Valori had bigger ships and more allies. We won because we refused to accept that cruelty and deception are the natural order of things. We refuse to believe that the universe belongs to those who are willing to hurt others. He paused, looking directly into the cameras. Humanity has always believed that tomorrow can be better than today. Some call that foolish. Some call it weakness. But I call it our greatest strength. Every time someone tells us to accept injustice, we say no. Every time someone tells us to surrender our dignity, we refuse. That is what it means to be human. And I believe that spirit will carry us to places we cannot yet imagine. The room erupted in applause, but Taihao simply nodded and walked away from the podium. He had said everything that needed to be said. In schools across Earth's colonies, children learned about the summit of Keseth Prime. Teachers explained how. A single woman had stood before the most powerful empires in the galaxy and refused to bow. How a small fleet of human ships had faced impossible odds and never flinched. How the courage of a few had changed the future for countless billions. Young students looked up at the stars with new eyes. They saw not the cold void of space, but a galaxy full of possibility, full of others who were watching humanity, learning from humanity, finding their own courage because humanity had found its first. On a small colony world called New Hanyang, a 12-year-old girl named Kong Somi sat in her classroom and raised her hand. Teacher, she asked, do you think we will ever meet other species who want to be our friends? Her teacher, a gray-haired woman who had lived through the crisis, smiled gently. I think we already have, she replied. And I think the number of friends we have will keep growing, as long as we remember what we learned at Keseth Prime. What did we learn? The teacher walked to the window and looked up at the afternoon sky, where the first stars were just beginning to appear. We learned that courage is contagious, she said. When one person stands up, others find the strength to stand with them. When one species refuses to bow, others remember that they too have dignity. We did not just save ourselves at Keseth Prime. We reminded the galaxy what it means to be free. Somi nodded slowly, her young mind absorbing these words. Outside the window, the stars waited, patient and eternal. The galaxy had watched humanity take a stand, and the galaxy would never be the same.